Hey, Fems. I am Violette, the founder of FemCity, and you're joining me today for Business for Your Soul. I'm super excited for our guest today, Randi Zinn. She is the founder and host of Going Beyond Podcast and Movement. I was on her podcast, I think it was last year. We had such a great time, such a great conversation. I follow her on Instagram. She's super inspirational and motivational. And I thought she'd be a great guest for us to learn from today. So welcome so much to the series, Randi.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on one of your platforms because we connected on one of mine originally.
Exactly. And I had such a great time. What I love most about you is that you are always sharing knowledge and wisdom. And when it comes to wellness and mindfulness, you share beautiful pictures of your family. They're always gorgeous, like out of a magazine. So you're very inspirational, even in the digital platform. We don't chat. You inspire me. So thank you for doing the work that you do.
Thank you.
So today we wanted to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about getting off track and finding your way back on track. So I know a lot of friends, including myself, by the way, have felt a little wonky during this time.
Yeah.
We've had to do a lot of pivoting. Like I'm over the word pivot. Like I'm going to use pivot one more time, but I'm done with like pivoting or all these feelings that we've been feeling. It's been so many, and I thought it would be a great conversation to have with Randi because she's so open about her own journey. And I think there's a lot of benefit when we hear other women sharing their stories of getting back on track. And so maybe you can fall off track. Maybe you just kind of teeter over the side. Maybe you are using this time to reset and to see what your alignment is, where you with purpose and intention in your career or business or life. And so today we're going to talk about that. If you do have any questions along the way, feel free to go ahead and add them here. And if not, we'll pop over later on and you can tag us and we will continue the conversation there. So Randi, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. We were talking a little bit in the green room about this moment and kind of shifting and pivoting. What was the time in your life where you felt that you were thrown off the tracks a little bit?
Well, actually, I went through a huge getting thrown off track when I was in my mid-20s, and I'm 40 now. So now, I have some real reflection on that point in my life. I was a recent graduate of my master's program. I thought that I was heading in a certain professional direction. And then I lost my dad in a totally freak accident. And my whole world derailed. One, because of the obvious emotional loss and experience, but also because, and I think your business lady followers here will find this interesting, my dad was an entrepreneur, had many businesses, had a lot of things going on, and his world was not prepared for him to not be in it. So I was also faced with massive amounts of responsibility and reactiveness to his life that I had to contend with. I'm an only child, and my parents had divorced. So it was just insane. And so my life took a major change. And in some ways, like I'm still dealing with aspects of it in a lot of ways, actually. What that time taught me is that the challenge, and this sounds so cliche, but I think it's really pertinent to this moment in time, is that when you're thrown in the fire of whatever, when you're thrown in that fire, you are literally being redeveloped to become the person that, I don't want to say you're meant to become, because it almost sounds like we're inviting bad things to happen.
Right.
But it is the moments when you're thrown in the fire. It's almost like an alchemy. It's like all of these very intense, like all the parts of you are being reconfigured. And then this new, Phoenix part of you gets to be reborn. And I'm sorry, but those things don't happen when it's easy breezy. So that to me is teaching, that moment in time and my continued journey of it does give me some of the fuel to have perspective during a time like this.
Right. Absolutely. It's beautiful. Yeah. We've talked, the whole month has been this theme of, and I've been interviewing women to share how they've gone through the pivots and the changes. What was this moment, or like you said, a while ago, I mean, and you're still living through it, I'm sure like you have like triggers and feelings of like, all of a sudden you kind of reliving those moments. And I started sharing at the beginning and it sounded so crazy, but when you're in that dark place of not knowing what's next and the world unraveling, there is a sense of grace in that you can then put the pieces back, like you had said, put the pieces back together in maybe a way that perhaps aligns better or serves you in the future. And we can tap into that and grow from that experience. And perhaps it's not the fancy thing to say during these times, but it's a way that you can utilize this time and pivot into a place where it can actually serve you in some way to just be stronger.
So I have a lot to say about that. I totally agree with you. Something, when you guys over at FemCity sent me like some ideas of what we might talk today about, it got me thinking about how we miss certain things and we feel like we're grieving the loss of a prior period of time versus how we're having to live now, the changes that are happening, both in terms of how we're interacting with other people, which is really difficult, how we're interacting professionally, whether our businesses are literally failing or being forced to just reimagine themselves, all the things that are happening. And I'm always going to come back, as you said, I'm like a mindfulness person. I'm always going to come back to the practices of mindfulness in times like this, because we have to be able to self-analyze and really understand why we're feeling certain things. So I'm going to offer a thought here, which is it possible that at least a decent percentage of some of the grief that you feel, the disconnection, the longing, the disillusionment that you feel isn't because something was taken away that had to stay yours, but maybe something that you were just used to, right? So, and then there really might be things that are very painful to lose and critical, and look at those things. But I would really offer that there's probably a good percentage of things that we were just used to. And maybe they didn't even really serve us. And I'm learning, I've been learning even prior to this pandemic, that the ability to name the feelings we have, the grief we have, the sensations we have in our body, are all a very important part of not being a victim to what you are experiencing. Because if you're not able to be with it and name it, whether you say it out loud to a friend or you journal it or you give yourself meditation time, whatever it is that you do, that you're able to acknowledge the experience you're feeling and say what you think it is about and dissect it a little bit, that's the difference between being a victim to something and just taken away with your thoughts and your emotions, or being able to actually see things for what they really are. And by doing that, I will tell you that I will admit that some of my loss and my grief right now is about things that were very wonderful in my life prior to this pandemic. But my desire for them and my need for them isn't all about necessity. It's also just about comfort.
Right.
Because when you can see that, you can start to analyze the different boxes of your life and the different needs you have. You can become more of a command of those things.
Absolutely. I think back of when we a couple of times, 10 times specifically, 2008, 2009, where we just lost everything. I mean, we hit rock bottom. And I remember that moment of much like you were saying, going through those processes, grieving part, right? And just acknowledging and feeling the feelings. I remember that being a critical part in my moving forward. And I don't think I would have been able to move forward if I hadn't felt through that and processed it and kind of compartmentalize the components and then the things that were serving me and the things that were not serving me. And much to was that really something that was, a blessing? But do I need that in my life? Is that where I need to have it or be a part? And these are the moments where you can kind of really see, even the silly things, I hate driving. I realize I'm not a fan of driving. And so as silly as it sounds, I don't want to drive after this. I'm going to work on car really big. I'm going to be a huge carpooler. So even the smaller things where you say, that didn't serve me. That wasn't something that I enjoyed. Even though they're all gifts and things that come up to our lives. But it's in that dark moment, that place where everything unravels, that you're able to put the pieces again, intentionally rather, just putting them together and forming what you feel is the connection you need now to move forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if that even makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Human nature is human nature. We like to be comfortable. We like to have ease. We like to have the relationships that, you know, support us. All these things, this is normal. But when we're put into a little bit of a pressure cooker period, and many of us are experiencing it, I think everyone is experiencing it, but it's just in varying degrees. Those of us who still have a roof over our heads and have food on the table, and you know, whose children may be struggling. My older one really is, but he's healthy. My heart goes out to the families that have special needs kids right now. I mean, there's so many things that I'm just like, oh my God, we're okay. So the ability, and I try to tell myself this too, for those of us that have the privilege to be able to have our needs met and then reflect on how we're growing in this time, like what a gift. I mean, the question is too, and especially I'm assuming a lot of your followers are very productive, type A, like get it done people. I am too. And I think we can also put a ton of pressure on ourselves to produce like the next great work or the next fabulous idea. And if that happens from this time, fantastic. But I also think that we have to be easeful and compassionate with ourselves right now, because we are going through a challenging time. Things are different. This is another thing I really want people to know. There is a collective grief right now that is thick and heavy, and we are sensory, emotional beings. And when we think that some of the waves that we feel and the discomfort we feel, like how many of you wake up in the morning and feel inexplicably off? Right? I know I am. And so, and some people say it happens in the evening, like they get like weird and feel strange emotionally. There is a heavy, thick fog of grief on our planet right now. And so just owning that is so important, so that you're not beating yourself up for what you feel, or for saying I haven't written my next, the next great American novel or something. But on the flip side of that is the choice to introspect and to grow in this space of more quiet, and a little bit more. I mean, actually I have no quiet because I'm home working with my kids, but that's like a whole other story. But in relationship to like the outside world, there is more quiet, so the question is like, what do you want to do at this time for your own growth? I mean, I think that that's the question that the universe is asking of us right now. Not like, what next great thing are you making, but who are you becoming right now? Like, where is your compassion expanding? How are you relating to those in need? How are you befriending those ugly parts of yourself that you just ignore because you're moving too fast?
Right.
It's those kinds of things.
I'm in awe of a lot of the things that you said. One thing that really struck with me is when you mentioned the heaviness of the world. I got goosebumps when you said that. I was sharing this on another podcast that I was a guest of, and I was talking about the time so right before this all happened, I was still going to the equinox because there was no one there, right? Like the first week of March, there were like 2 people in the entire gym, so I was still going, like, because there's no one there. And I knew it was going to close soon. And I remember going into Sephora because I have like really dark circles. And I remember thinking, close, let me get the Tarte under eye whatever before like everything shuts down. And I remember being in the Sephora, buying my little under eye concealer, and the ladies talking about the rumor of one person in Miami having it. Right? It was like I heard someone has it, like the first person that just, so it was like kind of like that chit chat that they were making. And I left, I drove home, and I remember walking into our dining room, and just, like you said, the heaviness, it feels like the heaviness of the world. It was like I just started crying.
Yeah.
Could not stop crying. And it was like I just felt, no one has ever been able, you said it perfectly, the heaviness of the world, like this collective energy that was so intense. And I cried a bit. It's like, okay, so like, and again, like what you said, how do you move forward? Who's that person you're going to become? How do you become more of service to others? Where's your place in that world? Where can you step in to be the catalyst for others that are also going through a change? So those are the that was, I remember that first sensation of going through that. Much like when we talk about like 9/11 and where were you when that happened? For me, it will be, when did that start? Like, when did that, for me, it happened at that store, just having them talk about it. And then just remember feeling that intensity of emotion and just releasing it. Like it was just pouring out of my eye, of what would the fear of what's to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we really discredit like how much we feel, and we miss the boat. Like we miss the opportunity to become and allow, not become, but actually just allow ourselves to be the sensory beings that we are. You know, like in the very beginning of this, I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about our planet needing a breath and needing a break. And when you saw those statistics about all these birds that are showing back up in places where there haven't been birds, and major amounts of pollution clearing, and being able to see the Himalayas, or it's like I really spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I think I'm a deep believer that and I'm going deep here, but I'm a deep believer that a lot of the pain we feel, like as human beings, is because of the pain of the planet, but we don't always know that. It's just that we're feeling a lot, and there's so much being like butchered.
Yep.
And we're just feeling everything. And I think, so I think a lot of what happens on the planet is happening with us. And so when I think about the pause that was happening and is happening, it's very similar for us. So like, where are our birds chirping now? Like, what can we hear better? You know, what mountains can we see more clearly? AKA, what parts of ourselves are we actually seeing? And it's not always the pretty parts, but that's okay. Like, that's the opportunity stuff.
Yeah. And the ability to, one of the other, like Steve and I started walking up and down like at night, because there was no traffic on our street. And we live on a pretty big like street, like the downtown kind of street. We were able to walk for the first time. So we were walking just to get out. And I remember like just the first time hearing, like you mentioned the birds, and I know you were using it in another context, but hearing the birds chirping for the first time, like was it for whatever reason, able to stop and listen to them. And even like, I was like, what's that thing? A waterfall? It was just palm trees just like playing in the air. You know, they just like rustling, and it made this sound of like a waterfall. And it was like, for the first time, an analogy of like listening, observing the world in a different way, and also then it reflected us seeing ourselves in a different way. Being able to listen to that connection that we're not just with.
Definitely. It's all very connected. And, you know, if you think about, for those of us that do live in homes with partners and kids, we are being forced back to some of the most simple things that many of us are moving very fast have lost, whether that's the family dinner concept, whether it's cleaning our own houses. Like, these are such privileged statements, and I get that. But when you're working and you have 2 working parents and kids, and the movie, you usually have somebody, if you can afford it, come and clean your house once a week, right? Well, now Sunday mornings, we're like family, turn the music on, we're cleaning the house. And, you know, but these things, there's something very soulful about it. It's like getting back into just taking care of your own shit. Like, you have to be able to do it. And I think we've lost our way with that. And, you know, for those of us who are not living in a home with the hustle bustle and are experiencing a more actual personal isolation, and even those of us who are with our families, like, how much do we realize that physical connection, hugs, the people we love, like how much it matters? I secretly hugged my best friend for the first time the other day, and we both cried, and it was like the most amazing hug ever. We're both very healthy, and we felt like it was safe. But I mean, so many months of not hugging anyone except my husband and my kids, like, makes me realize how much all of these other relationships fill me.
Yeah.
So we have such new appreciation too. And I'm not minimizing the discomfort and the pain and the loss and any of it, but like, we have to be able to see everything to get through it.
Right. And I appreciate everything you've said. And the hugging thing is, I have warned people when this is over, like you cannot, I'm gonna be hugging and like it's gonna be like, "Oh, this is like beyond uncomfortable. Like you need to like release this hug." But that is one thing that I miss the most is like the hugging of other people, which is already I think a problem for me, like random strangers. So I think I was already like,
I know I scare people. I'm like, I'm a hugger, but yeah,
I'm not a hugger. And like, oh, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that there were non-huggers. And that you have to ask permission. Like, can I hug you? Is that okay for me to hug you? For those that are watching and are feeling like that they're perhaps at that moment where things are completely apart and they're looking to rebuild, much like what you shared, what are some tips that you have used for yourself or that you know to be true that people can use to get back on track or find a deep, profound alignment to where they were wanting to go anyway? So I don't want to make it sound like everyone fell off track. Maybe you just kind of like are tinkering off and you're just kind of like, okay, this is not me. I know that I want to do this instead. How do they get to that point? Like, how do they get back on track?
Are you asking your guests or are you asking me?
You.
I was like, hold on. I'm going to take a picture of us for social. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me as I didn't realize I was being asked a question.
What advice would you give? Like if someone was listening and going, okay, I've fallen off track. I've lost my job. I don't know which way to go. I'm a little bit sad.
Yeah. So it's going to come back. It's going to come back to kind of where I began, but it does start small and simple and mindful, because when you're trying to put like the horse in front of the carriage and the headlights in front of the car in front of the headlights, it's just going to get more and more perplexing. And the more simple you can make your contemplation of a very difficult time, the small wins will help you see more clearly. And so, if you've lost your job and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, it's like create that simple schedule that you can attack your life. And that can be like 1 hour in the morning is my workout, my 10 minutes of meditation, my healthy breakfast, start the day right, like set yourself up to win. And then like building in the practices, the reading of the things that you want to study, you need to study. We all know that the pockets that we need to infuse more into. So invest little bits into those. Like everybody says, you cannot set major goals for yourself when you're in crisis. I mean, it's setting yourself up to fail. That's what it is. So it's really like utilizing the small, simple practices that exist to get in touch with your body, to get in touch with your thoughts, your emotions, and to surround yourself with as much positivity as possible. The other good news about this period of time in terms of getting yourself on track is that there are so many virtual tools now. And as much as we miss each other and we miss the in-person, I mean, there is therapy virtually, there is coaching virtually, there is workouts and meditation virtually, apps. I'm using all that stuff now. And it's still really good. And I feel like it is helping me. I'll tell you the things I use. I use the Calm app. I use Obey Fitness. I use Yoga Anytime. I see my therapist online. These are all the things that I'm doing to continue to fuel my body, mind, and spirit. And we do have a choice. We have a choice to collapse, or we have a choice to slowly nurture the garden that we are. And so there are tools out there, there are plans out there, there is support out there. Be aware that if you are binging on news media, you are fueling yourself with more fear. Know what's going on, and then put it over there for a minute. Ask yourself what you need to be reading, what you need to be listening to raise your vibration. These little choices are creating your path forward.
Beautiful. That news thing is so true. Like I got looped into that. Like I started watching them, like go to the next one, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling heavy. Like I'm feeling so. That's definitely. Those are all amazing tips. Thank you so much for sharing. That one specifically, I had fallen in on that rabbit hole myself. So we're wrapping up. I'm sure you have a lot of femmes that want to stay connected to you. Randi, what is a way that femmes can follow your journey, about the work that you do?
Yeah, the best and most frequent place to hang out with me is on Instagram nowadays. So my Instagram is at Randi Zinn, one word. I have daily posts, Instagram lives, lots of dialogue in general. My biggest output from a content standpoint is my podcast. And I would invite everyone to head over there and listen. It's called the Going Beyond podcast. It's everywhere that podcasts stream. And it is a place to go deeper into real topics of life. So it's everything from entrepreneurship to wellness, some motherhood, parenthood stuff, a lot about spirituality, just everywhere that I'm interested in going. And recently, very, very special to me, I launched a coronavirus survival miniseries. So I really, when this whole thing started, I jumped in full force and started recording episodes with like my go-to people about surviving your relationships, your kids, fear and anxiety, trauma, death and dying. I interviewed a New York-based funeral director. Like I went into it. And the episodes are really, really special. I'm very proud of it. It kind of felt like it was my way that I could give back. So there's that. And then I would love especially to invite everyone listening. I'm actually hosting my first virtual event this Sunday evening. It is kind of like a concluding experience for this mini series I did, but I'm doing a conversation with my two go-to psychotherapist friends who are brilliant. And we're actually diving into this topic of new normal. And that term is very up right now. And everyone has a very different relationship to it. And there's a lot of need to express what we're feeling around this topic and where we go with it and where is the walls and where's the interest and how do we befriend it at some point? How do we make peace with this idea? So we're gonna get into it, and there's similar to this experience, there's like a live aspect, Q&A. So we're gonna be answering questions throughout. So those tickets, and we're giving a big percentage of proceeds to Together Rising. So I'm excited to support a nonprofit doing so much during this time. So those are available on my website, beyondmom.com/events. And you can also find the link on my Instagram to just head over.
Okay. And if you're listening to this later on, if you go back to FemCity where you found this link, we'll have those links for you. So it makes it really easy for you to find Randi. That's exciting. And so just like I said, I'm good, and I love following you on Instagram. And I'm so grateful that you took the time today to share with us so much wisdom and just tips to help us through this time. So thank you.
Thank you. And I wish everybody strength and peace and all the growth that is right there for us during this time. Bye.